Okay, let's simplify rational expressions. Okay, now one thing we need to remember when we simplify any rational expression is to include any domain restrictions that get canceled, any factors that get canceled. Okay, so if we were to look at just this regular fraction and we want to simplify that, one way to do that is to factor it. Let's see, so let's go maybe with 4 times 8 instead of 32 times y, and then 4 times 6 instead of 24. And the reason I picked 4 is because it goes into both of them, and I could cancel those, right? So I could cancel out a 4 and cancel out a 4. But then I still have a common factor here. So this is why, which I would have to cancel. So this is why we want to choose the largest common factor. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it as 8 times 4, which is 32, over 8 times 3, which is 24. Then 8 divided by 8 is 1 whole. Okay, so I've got ones. And I would have then just 1 times 4 times y over 1 times 3. Okay, and if there's a domain restriction, that would have to be a variable that was canceled. So I didn't cancel any variables, just this 8. So I'm good on my final answer. All right, let's take a look at this one over here. The 3 and the 2 have no common factors, but this could be rewritten as x squared times x, because x to the third is x squared times x. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can see that, oh yeah, I can cancel this x squared and this x squared into 1 divided by 1. That's a canceled factor. So that leaves me with the 3 and the x in the numerator and the 2 in the denominator. Now, here's where I have to include domain restrictions, because remember, the denominator cannot equal 0. And if x was 0, that denominator would be 0. So I have to say x cannot equal 0 and let the person know that this started off as something with a denominator where x could not equal 0. Okay, you'll get the hang of this as the further we go on. Okay, so let's do a couple more. Now, looking at this problem, these are not factors in the numerator. These are terms, and the difference between a factor and a term is you can't cancel on terms. Addition and subtraction, can't touch it. So we have to factor this before we can do any canceling whatsoever. So looking at the numerator, they both have a 4 and an x squared. And that would leave me with a 2x plus 1. And then this would still be 20x. All right, so really I have 3 factors in the numerator. I have 4 times x squared times 2x plus 1. And I have 2 factors in the denominator, 20 times x. So let's look and see if we can cancel some factors. Sure enough, 4 goes into 4 once and 4 goes into 25 times. And x goes into x squared x times. So this would all turn out to be my numerator, 1 times x times 2x plus 1 over, and all that's left in the denominator is 5. So my final answer would be that, but I have to say, wait a minute, did I have any domain restriction that I canceled? In this fraction, x cannot equal 0 because that would make it 0. So in my answer, x still cannot equal 0, and that is part of your answer. Okay, let's take a peek at this one. Again, we have a bunch of terms. If we're going to cancel anything, we need to factor it. So if we look at the denominator, the 3 can come out of x minus 5. And if you remember, one of our factoring tricks was, if there's a 5 minus x and I really want an x minus 5, all I have to do is factor out a negative 1, and it becomes x minus 5. Okay, because that x is negative and that 5 is positive, but if I take a negative 1 out, it changes them. Why would I want to do this? Because these 2 factors cancel to 1s. 1 divided by 1. And my final answer would be -1/3. Then I have to say, wait a minute. Is there a domain restriction? Yeah, let's take our denominator and see what makes it 0. 3x equals 15, x equals 5. Okay, so 5 is not in my, that is a domain restriction. And since it was a domain restriction at the beginning, it's still a domain restriction. And that is part of my answer. Okay. A couple more of these. So we're going to look at this one first on the left, and let's factor them because we can't do any canceling of anything except factors. So let's factor that x out. Oh boy, I see a little bit more than that. I think I've got to take that x squared minus 4 and change it to x plus 2 and x minus 2. Everybody okay with that? All right, so I took this numerator and brought it down to here. Now let's go back to the denominator, and I think we can factor that as x times x. 2 times 3 is 6, and -2 times -3 is +6. So I'll bring that down to x minus 2, x minus 3. Okay, now that it's factored, I can cancel some of those factors that divide out to 1. X minus 2 divided by x minus 2 is 1. And that leaves me with x times x plus 2 over x minus 3. Did I have any domain restrictions? I sure did. Let's look at this one. It's already factored for us. X cannot equal, just in the denominator, 2, and x cannot equal 3. So I can still see that x cannot equal 3. I don't need to list that, but I do need to list the x cannot equal 2. So my final answer will be, see how you can still see that x can equal 3, but you can't tell that x cannot equal 2. So that's why we list it, because it's otherwise invisible. All right, look at these. Oh my goodness. What do we do when there's 4 terms? Well, we can't cancel a thing. There's just terms. You can't cancel a thing until it's factors. So I think we're going to call this factor by grouping. All right. So what do these both have? So I'm going to take the first 2 of the numerator. 8 and 12 divide by 4, and they both have x squared. And so what's left here would be a 2x minus, and what's left here is a 3. And then let's look at the right side, and it looks like they both have a 4. And if I leave that, divide that by 4, I get a 2x minus 3. There's my factor by grouping. So all of that will become, let's see, 4x squared plus 4 in the fronts times 2x minus 3. Okay. That's going to go a little bit further, but let's go ahead and do the denominator. All right, so I'm going to look at these two, and they both have x squared, and I have 2x minus 3. And look at these two, and they both have a 5, and that's 2x minus 3. So the denominator is going to be x squared plus 5 times 2x minus 3. Okay, little review on factor by grouping. We can see that we can cancel these 2 to 1s. That means when I cancel it that I have to list that as a domain restriction. And what it looks like I'm left with is 4x squared plus 4, which could be factored with the 4, but not necessary because there's nothing to cancel with it. Okay, but I do need to know 2x minus 3 cannot equal 0. So let's find out what our domain restriction is. So x cannot equal 3/2 because that is my factor that was canceled. So comma, x cannot equal 3/2. This is my complete answer with domain restriction. And I think we're going to stop the video here. And now it's all in the same section, but you're welcome to go practice simplifying in your homework, or you can wait and watch multiplying coming up.